This week, we're going to be looking at one of the three types of essays that they're going to ask you to write on the AP Lit exam in May, okay? And this week, we're going to start talking about what they call the open-ended essay. One essay prompt, they give you a poem and a prompt, and you've got to analyze that poem based on whatever the prompt asks you to do. The other essay prompt gives you a piece of prose. The open-ended essay is where they give you a prompt, but you actually decide what work of literature you're going to analyze through it. And normally that'll be what they call a major work, a novel or a play. Okay. When we get to the end of the year, we'll have studied hopefully 5 or 6 full-length works. We've already got 2 under our belts with the things they carried in the Glass Menagerie. So this week, today, tomorrow, Thursday, we're going to do some stuff in class, a little bit outside of class, to look at how they structure this prompt, how to prepare for it, what type of writing skills they're going to evaluate, all that sort of stuff. The first step is to briefly take a look at the packet you have in front of you. Okay. Now, full disclaimer, I'm going to mark some things on this packet, and I want you to mirror that. So if I highlight something, highlight it. If I circle something, circle it. If I draw an alligator next to something, draw an alligator next to something. I'm not going to draw an alligator next to you, but mirror that. When we get done with class, everything that I didn't mark, you still need to go through the packet and look at closely. Okay? We're a little pressed for time today with the unique schedule, and I just don't think that it does a whole lot of good for me to read something to you that you can read. Okay? There is going to be a small assignment for you to take care of between the end of class and getting to class tomorrow. Okay, but we'll get to that. All right, so on that first page, there are attributes of what they call the open-ended prompt. Okay, basically, no matter what prompt they give us on May 9th, it's going to have these 3 ingredients to it. Okay, so if my annotation machine will work, I'm going to highlight concept, range, directive. Those were supposed to be straight lines highlighting those words. It looks like I'm crossing them out. I'm not. Concept, range, directive. No matter what the prompt is, it will have those 3 ingredients. I'm going to work a little out of order. Range of acceptable works. Normally what they will ask is for you to choose a novel or play. Okay? They do provide a list of works that could be acceptable, but when we get to the springtime, I'll be explaining why you should ignore the list they give you. Okay? Don't worry about the list component. At the end of this week, you're going to be writing one of these essays in class. That's what Friday's class will be. I'm going to require everybody to write about the Glass Menagerie because it's freshest in our minds. So we're not quite done with the Wingfields just yet. Okay? So in addition to the range, they will give you some sort of literary concept. It'll either be a quote that establishes some sort of subject, or a specific literary technique, okay? Some sort of concept that they'll be asking you to consider. And then a directive or directives. What do they want you to do, okay? What do they want you to respond to? All right. If you go to the back of the first page, you'll see 2 sample prompts, and I've footnoted the 3 ingredients. Okay, so that first prompt, what's the range of works? This one says you can choose a novel or a play. What's the concept? They provide this quote that deals with tragic heroes. And what's the directive? What do you need to do? You need to explain how the suffering brought upon others by that figure contributes to the tragic vision of the work as a whole. The second prompt, their range of works is novel, an epic, or a play, so you could choose an epic poem if you're crazy like that. The concept is the element of time being used in a distinct way. Gosh, the things they carried would work for that. Glass Menagerie would probably work for that. And then the directive, how does the author's manipulation of time contribute to the effectiveness of the work as a whole? I'm going to highlight a couple phrases. The work as a whole, do not summarize. Sometimes they will literally write those in the prompt. Sometimes they don't, but it's always implied. The work as a whole is their way of saying theme. Okay? In other words, how does the tragic hero of whatever you're writing about contribute to the meaning of the work? You've got to sort out what meaning of the work you're going to focus on. Okay? Do not summarize plot will always be important. You're not proving to your reader that you've read something. Look at all the details I can recall. See, I actually read this story. Okay? You want to provide details relevant to your argument, but you can envision a reader who is familiar with the work, just as you. That'll be easy on Friday. I'm your reader. You know I've studied the Glass Menagerie with you. So you shouldn't feel an urge to summarize or recap things that are irrelevant to your point. Okay. We will spend some time this week practicing essentially this, annotating the prompt itself. Because if you look underneath these sample prompts where it says expectations of open-ended essays. So these are the expectations of the grader. Here's what they're looking to see you do. And you really can boil it down to these three things. Okay. Clear and complete adherence to the prompt. Answering all parts of the question, avoiding irrelevant topics. It doesn't matter how brilliant your response is. If it doesn't answer the question they asked, it's going to get a super low score. Okay, it could be filled with brilliant insight about the Glass Menagerie, but if it didn't relate to the topic, the concept, or the directive they gave you, it's going to get a really low score. So you don't want to rush through reading those prompts. Okay, mature understanding of the material. When they say mature or mature, if you want to say it like that, what they're really looking for is that you can identify and analyze complex ideas. Okay. The way I put it to students is, analyzing a story that expresses that one must live life to the fullest is not that complex of an idea. Okay. Let's use Amanda Wingfield as an example. To someone who's maybe casually read that play, maybe they saw it once, they might pigeonhole Amanda Wingfield as the stock character of an overbearing, controlling mother. I hope all of you, after an academic study of that play, know that she's more complex than that. That it would be inaccurate to merely describe her as an overbearing mother. Okay? They want to see that your analysis can hone in on complexity. And lastly, strong and convincing support for the stance. Specific examples. With this essay, you're going to be writing about a work that you don't have in front of you. Okay, Friday, you're going to write an essay about the Glass Menagerie, and you won't have the play in front of you. So specific does not mean direct quotes. Specific means if you're going to make the claim that Amanda Wingfield is in some way overbearing, you need to be able to recall specific moments where that is put into action. Okay? Not merely, well, she tries to control Tom in everything he does. That's not specific. Okay? You want to be as specific as when he's eating breakfast, or when she confronts him on the type of books he gets from the library, or that sort of thing. Okay? Sophisticated analysis, I'm not going to worry about that right now. That's really more of a reflection of your own writing, that you write in a sophisticated manner. And this first time through, I'm not really all that concerned with your writing. I want to focus more on the content of these essays. We'll save sophistication for later. All right. Go ahead and flip to the next page, please. Those who took AP Lang will probably be familiar with the holistic scoring that AP uses, where they grade your essay on a scale of 0 to 9. I'm going to put a line right here with the 5s. Okay, I meant to highlight the actual 5. I've never been a grader, but I've talked to many who do it, and they've told me a lot about the setup, how they go somewhere for a week and they grade about 200 essays a day. They have to grade each essay in about a minute and a half. Okay, each essay in about a minute and a half. So they don't pick this apart, and they don't deduct portions of points for this error and portions of points for that error or anything of that nature. They read your essay and they give it a holistic score. Okay, good, bad, everything. Okay, really what it boils down to is, did you answer the question or not? If you did, you're probably going to go somewhere between a 5 and a 9. If you didn't, you'll probably be somewhere below a 5 and a 0. Okay, there's a more complex rubric. These words on the page, they just isolate the adjectives. So I want to look just at the first, highlight just the first word of each of those. So a plausible analysis means it could work. There's nothing necessarily that is contradictory or inaccurate about it. It's plausible. But the more support you provide, you can make it reasonable. And the more complexity and sophistication you can provide, you can make it persuasive. Okay. If you don't quite hit the mark, there are degrees to that as well. You go, well, it's inadequate. Well, it's weak. Well, it's a stick figure drawing of their AP Lit teacher. Okay. To get a 0, you really probably do have to do a stick figure drawing. If you put any words on there, they'll probably give you a 1. Okay, so their pressure's off. All right. When I grade your essays, I'll have to convert this into a score out of 100, but I'll grade it holistically as well. I'll give you lots of feedback, something you don't get when you take the actual test, because we're here to get better. But essentially, I'll categorize them on the scale, and then I'll have a conversion chart so that accounts for the difficulty. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay, so you should be at this point of the handout where it says tips for meeting expectations. Okay, anywhere where you see a time mentioned, I want you to highlight that. I don't have them all up on the screen at the moment, but you get 2 hours to write 3 essays. I'm no mathematician, but that means you've got to average about 40 minutes per essay. Okay, so this time budget is a way to get this essay written in 40 minutes. Okay. Friday, when you do this in class, you'll get the full class period. You'll get 49, and then we'll start to shorten that time. Okay. They recommend that the first 1 to 3 minutes you work the prompt, meaning you annotate, physically circle and underline the concept, the range, and the directive of the prompt. Okay. You don't want to put a bunch of time and energy responding to a question that they didn't ask. There's nothing more frustrating. I don't know if you've ever had that experience of, like, for example, like maybe in a math class, you do 10 problems on page 232, and you actually were supposed to do pages 323. And that's always frustrating because you put in work, right? It wasn't that you just brushed off the assignment. Okay. But in this circumstance, if you don't answer what they ask, it could be the most brilliant thing ever, and it might as well just be a calculus problem as far as the score you're going to get. Okay? 5 to 10 minutes working your plan. In my experience, especially early in the year, I find that students will sometimes, in an in-class essay environment, they'll read the prompt and they'll start writing the essay because they're afraid that they'll run out of time. Okay? I'm going to recommend, and we're actually going to practice taking a lot of time to plan before we write. Okay. Let me put a little scenario in front of you. Have you ever been writing an essay and halfway through you realize you're wrong? Or you realize that you have gone completely off topic? And you look at the clock and you go, it's been 20 minutes. And now I have to start over. Okay. If you take 5 to 10 minutes to plan, you'll probably hit that same roadblock, but in 2 or 3 minutes instead of 20. Okay. Yeah, you're going to have less. What it says on the handout is 20 to 25 minutes. That should be all you need, especially if you know where you're going. Okay. Sort of the difference between driving somewhere that you know where to go, you know which turns to make, as opposed to when you get in your car and you are looking up the directions for the first time. Okay. You want to plan to the point where you know where you're going. You'll be able to write more confidently, clearly, all that sort of stuff. Okay. Like I said, I can't see it right now, but underneath that, it says that should give you about 20 to 25 minutes to write the essay. And then if you have time, proofread. They score it as a rough draft. So there are going to be spelling errors. There might even be run-ons and fragments. Ooh. They won't care. They're not going to lower your score if those things don't get in the way. In fact, let's say you have a brain fart and the whole essay you call Amanda Laura the whole time. But your analysis makes clear that you're talking about the mother, even though you're accidentally calling her Laura. That will not hurt your score. They'll go, they had to write this thing in 40 minutes. They probably had a brain fart. Their analysis is strong. We don't care. Okay? If you flip to the next page, the next few steps focus on the skills that they are looking to see you either use or not use in this type of essay. Okay, so I'm going to highlight the phrase opening statement. In that second main bullet point, I'm going to highlight the word concise. And I'm going to highlight the phrase forecast the approach. I'd recommend right next to opening statement, I want you to add, I'll call it a synonym, well, a couple synonyms. I'd write first paragraph. I'd also write thesis statement. When I say the phrase opening statement in reference to these types of essays, I'm talking about your first paragraph. I'm also pretty much talking about your thesis statement. Okay? And they do not want, nor do you have the time, for a flowery introduction that starts with a general topic, an example from the real world, or interesting anecdote or fact, or any of those attention-getting techniques that you've been taught in English classes. They don't care. They're not assessing your ability to use that skill. You are in a hurry writing. They're in a hurry grading. Okay? So you want opening statements that as quickly as possible, as concisely as possible, answer the question. Who's the tragic figure? In what work of literature? And how does the author show them to blah, blah, blah? Okay? As quickly as possible. Opening statements, first paragraphs, they might be 1 or 2 sentences long. They don't care. This is not your college application essay where I'm recommending that you have every paragraph in a uniform 8 to 12 sentence range. Okay? There is no one structure that they're looking to see. Okay. It also says forecast the approach. In other words, by the time they get to the end of your first paragraph, your opening statement, they should know not only what your answer is, but how you are going to support it. Okay? Don't save that for the end. This is not a grand reveal at the end. Okay? Olivia, you okay? Alexis, what about you? Okay, thank you. As quickly as possible, let them know. Remember, this is your first impression, and they only are going to spend about a minute or two on your essay. Okay? So, as quickly as possible, let them know this is a good one. I know what I'm talking about, and here's where I'm going to go with it. Okay? And again, we're going to practice these things this week. Underneath that, I'm not going to go through these right now, but like I said, what I don't highlight and mark, you should go through on your own tonight. 3 sample opening statements of different styles, and there's commentary on what is good about them or maybe where they fall short. Okay? That'll help you sort of clarify what we're looking for. All right. Last page of this handout mentions strong body to the essay. Body simply meaning the paragraphs where you're supporting your thesis. Don't know how many there will be. It depends on what you're saying. Okay. They want them to be organized. They want them to be specific. They want them to focus on how, and they want you to express, not impress. There's no one way to organize these essays. I'm never going to tell you 4 paragraphs is the way to go, 3 paragraphs is the way to go, or whatever. Depends on what they ask you to do and how you choose to support it. They are more interested in seeing that you can organize in a way that fits whatever you're trying to say. Okay? They want you to be specific rather than general. They want you to focus more on the how, meaning how do literary techniques impact meaning. And they do not want to see you using big words just for the sake of using big words. Okay, don't fit in fancy words just to try and impress them and sound smart. That usually backfires. Okay, you may sound a little too pretentious, or you'll use words inaccurately. But at the same time, we don't want to sound like a children's story and go, Tom was mad, then he left, and he was glad. Because those words are a little too broad and vague to really encapsulate the complexity of emotion. Okay. Oh, I bet the last thing on here says something about a concluding statement. I'm going to highlight, and you should too. It's important that concluding statement not be redundant. And then I'm just going to star this first italicized note underneath it. You know those concluding paragraphs you're taught to write that summarize the points that you've made? Those concluding paragraphs that are basically the same as introductory paragraphs? No. No, no, no. Not in this circumstance. You don't have the time to repeat yourself. They are not assessing your ability to summarize your own points. Okay? So that whole concept of I've got to wrap up my essay by summarizing what I've already said, not in these circumstances. In fact, it can sometimes make your argument weaker because it can sometimes sound like you're not sure you made your point. Okay? Instead, you want to try and end on your strongest point. If you took 10 minutes to plan and you know I've got 3 things to say about this topic, what do you think you're best at explaining? Put it at the end and it will feel conclusive. All right. Feedback from AP Lit students in past years, especially early in the year, say that it can feel a little awkward on this first essay to not write that summarizing conclusion because you've been trained to do it all the time. Okay. We'll look at that this week. All right. The goal is that you're always talking about the meaning of the work, so it can all feel conclusive. It's all about the biggest idea. Okay. So there's one thing that I'm going to ask you to do between now and when you get to class tomorrow. Okay. I've got another packet for you that has a sample prompt and then some sample responses. Okay, so in this packet, if you look on the second page, or I guess, well, it's the front of the second page, you'll see a sample prompt. It's from the 2011 AP Lit test. Okay, the first thing I need you to do, so the first bullet point on the front page says that I want you to work that prompt. In other words, you'll take 1 to 3 minutes. You will physically annotate the concept, the directive, the range of works, okay? So that when you look at the responses, you know what they're responding to, okay? Then you're going to go through the essays. Now, a couple things. These essays might have chosen works that you've never read before, maybe even heard of before. That's not a problem, okay? I'm not asking you to assess how accurately they analyze something. All right, here's what I want you to do. For each of those samples, you're going to highlight every sentence of the essay. So this is a coloring exercise. Okay, you'll pick 3 colors, and you will use one color for topic or thesis type sentences. Sentences that are establishing the thesis of the essay or the topic of the paragraph, wherever they show up. Anything topic-y, give that a color. Any sentences that are providing specific examples or details. Again, you may not know the novel they're writing about, but you can still determine if they're talking about something specific or providing an example. Give that a color. And third, sentences that are analyzing. They're not merely giving a detail, but they're saying, here's what that detail means. Give that a color. There may be sentences that do multiple things. Do your best to try and differentiate. If you go, well, the sentence starts with an example but ends with analysis, try and find a way to mark that as best you can. There might be some sentences that you go, I just can't categorize it in one of those 3. That's okay, just leave it blank, okay? But these essays should be filled with color when we get back to class tomorrow. Okay. The last thing it says here, on the front page is a rubric for how they score this essay. I want you to give it a score. I know you're not a trained AP grader, but in your mind, was their response plausible? Was it reasonable? Was it inadequate? Again, even without knowing the specific works they're analyzing, you should be able to at least try and give it a score. Okay. Goal of this class is not to become an accurate score, so it's not about guessing correctly. But we'll use that to base discussion tomorrow. Okay? Any questions about that assignment? Okay, good deal. That's it. We'll see you tomorrow. We'll talk about them.